Welcome. My name is Miss Noreen, and I'm here with you for another exciting lesson in ELA. Today's lesson focus will be ELA Grade 5, Module 12, Day 1, HMH into Writing Narrative Poetry. The title for today's lesson is Narrative Poetry. The focus question, read along with me, boys and girls. Our words paint the story of our lives. The lesson objectives. Follow along, boys and girls, as I read the objectives for this lesson. Review what students already know about writing poetry. Read several narrative poems. Discuss how narrative poetry is different from other types of poetry. And for language, discuss features of poetry with academic language. Okay, boys and girls, take a look at this poem to your left. It's called The Raven. A raven is a type of bird. It's by a famous poet named Edgar Allan Poe. As I read this poem, I want you to think about what this poem is trying to tell the readers as you listen to it. So what picture is being painted in your mind as you read or as you hear the words to this poem? Here we go. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. What's happening in this poem? What is going on? And what do you notice about some of the words in the poem? Keep those thoughts in mind as we move along through the rest of this lesson. So today, boys and girls, we're going to be learning about the different elements of poetry. So we're going to start out by watching a quick video about what are the elements of a poem and how poetry is written. Pay careful attention to these elements because some of these elements are to be utilized in your poetry when you write your own poems.
Hello, readers. Let's talk about poems. Poetry is a special kind of writing. If ordinary writing is like talking, then poetry is like singing. Poetry is a way of making art with language. Poems can express huge ideas or feelings. They can be about the sound or rhythm of language, or they can be goofy little jokes. It's like any other kind of writing. Poems can be about everything, or they can be about nothing at all. They can be funny or sad or sweet. They can rhyme. They can very much not rhyme. And all of that is, in my opinion, absolutely wonderful. I think of some poems as condensed ideas. They contain a lot of ideas in small amounts of text, so every word matters a lot. Those are little light bulbs representing ideas. So I'm going to look at a couple of poems today in order to describe some parts of a poem. Let's begin with the poem Cat by Marilyn Singer. It goes like this. Cat. I prefer warm fur, a perfect fire to lie beside, a cozy lap where I can nap, an empty chair when she's not there. I want heat on my feet, on my nose, on my hide. No cat I remember dislikes December inside. So the person who wrote this poem, Marilyn Singer, is the poet. For stories, the person who writes the poem is an author, but for poems, the writer is a poet. But who is telling the poem? Who's speaking? The person whose voice we hear in a poem is called the speaker. Which is another thing I like about poetry. When you're having trouble understanding a poem, read it aloud. Part of the pleasure of poetry, for me, is hearing the words bounce around as you say them. And in this poem, I'm pretty sure the speaker is a cat. Now you'll notice there are only 3 sentences in this poem, but they're separated into 15 lines. You can see these lines have anywhere from 1 to 4 words in them. Lines can be as long or as short as a poet likes. But here the poet is creating these line breaks to indicate pauses and rhythms. Right, like normally we wouldn't start a new line here if this were prose, which is what we call all other forms of writing. Prose uses normal sentences and paragraphs. Right, the poet is choosing to create line breaks in order to change the way the sentence or the line looks on the page. Poetry is not just about how it sounds, sometimes it's about how it looks as it's written. Now, in addition, the poet is also using spaces to scoot these three phrases over, as well as this word, inside. The words themselves are scooted in. They're curled up and feeling cozy, like a cat by a fire in the middle of December. You'll also notice that some, but not all, of the lines rhyme with each other. And let's take a moment to think for a second, what is rhyming, really? One way to think about it is when the ending sound of a word matches the other ending sound of a word, like lap and nap, or when a bunch of sounds match each other throughout a pair of words, like remember and December. I want to be super clear about this part because I was already out of high school before I learned this thing, but poems don't have to rhyme. They can, but they definitely don't have to. I have one more poem part to describe to you, and to do it, I want to use Billy Collins' poem, Litany, which sounds like a fancy poem at first, but then becomes much more conversational. I'll end by reading the first three stanzas, which are these paragraph-looking things. Not all poems are broken into stanzas, but this one is. So, those are some parts of the poem. To review, a poet writes lines. The place where each line ends is called a line break, and a group of lines together in a paragraph is called a stanza. The voice that tells us the poem's narrator, is called the speaker. Some poems rhyme, others don't. Cool. Here's a snippet of Litany by Billy Collins. Litany. You are the bread and the knife, the crystal goblet and the wine. You are the dew on the morning grass, and the burning wheel of the sun. You are the white apron of the baker, and the marsh birds suddenly in flight. However, you are not the wind in the orchard, the plums on the counter, or the house of cards, and you are certainly not the pine-scented air. There is just no way that you are the pine-scented air. It is possible that you are the fish under the bridge, maybe even the pigeon on the general's head, but you are not even close to being the field of cornflowers at dusk. There's more, but I'd love it if you looked it up and read it aloud yourself. You can learn anything. David out.
Okay, boys and girls, these are the elements of poetry. Some of these were already discussed in the video. We learned about line, which is a phrase or sentence in a single row. Stanza, which is a group of lines within a poem. Also, these literary devices. Rhyme, which is words with the same ending sound. Free verse, which is poetry that does not rhyme and has no fixed pattern. Simile, a comparison using like or as. Metaphor, a comparison of two things that does not use like or as. Alliteration, which is the repeated consonant sounds. And assonance, repeated vowel sounds. So what is a narrative poem, boys and girls? Well, let's find out. Okay, boys and girls, what is narrative poetry? Well, let's find out. So you already know what a narrative is. So it's the form of a story. A narrative poem is simply a poem that tells a story. Some are shorter, but some are so long that they're published into books. Some examples that you may know are Dr. Seuss books, The Spider and the Fly, Roald Dahl's Revolting Rhymes, The Owl and the Pussycat, and The Highwayman. Narrative poems are usually containing a character, a setting, a conflict or problem, and sometimes a resolution. Narrative poems are usually divided into stanzas, the poetry version of paragraphs. They also often contain some regular form of rhyme. So rhymes are words with the same ending sounds. Narrative poems can be serious or funny, shorter or longer, but always tell a story. Those were the elements of narrative poetry, boys and girls. So now it's game time, boys and girls. We're going to see if we can take those poetry elements and match them correctly. Are you ready? Well, here we go. All right, boys and girls, we are going to play a game now. We have these different poetic elements, and we are going to match them with the correct pieces of writing. We have alliteration, which is the repetition of the same consonant sound in the beginning of the words. We have repetition, which means repeating of words. We have rhyme, which means that the words have the same endings. We have repetition and rhyme. So here are our 4 pieces of writing. I'm going to read them to you and give you some time to see if you can match them correctly. Today is a great day. Things are going my way. Today is a great day. It's a perfect day to go outside and play. Today is a great day. Simon the snake slithered along the shore. Rain, go away. I'm tired of being inside. Rain, go away. There are puddles everywhere. Rain, go away. After a long flight, the bird landed in the tree, but when it saw the cat climbing up, it had to flee. Okay, boys and girls, go ahead, pause this video and see if you can match the different poetic elements to the correct pieces of writing. Come back to check your answers. All right, boys and girls, welcome back. Let's see if we got the correct answers and we matched the correct poetic elements to the right pieces of writing. So for rhyme, it was this right here. After a long flight, the bird landed in the tree, but when it saw the cat climbing up, it had to flee. Tree and flee rhyme. So this was a correct pair. For repetition, it was rain, go away. I'm tired of being inside. Rain, go away. There are puddles everywhere. Rain, go away. The repetition was rain, go away. Okay. For alliteration, it was Simon the snake slithered along the shore. So the repetition of consonant sound was S in the beginning of these words. Awesome work. And the last one, repetition and rhyme, it was this piece of writing right here. Today is a great day. Things are going my way. Today is a great day. It's a perfect day to go outside and play. Today is a great day. The words or the phrase, today is a great day, was repeated and there were rhyming words. Day, way, day, play. Awesome work, boys and girls. I'm sure you got all of these correct. Let's continue with the rest of our lesson. All right, boys and girls, now is your independent work part of this lesson. You will be writing your own narrative poems, but before you write it, you will be brainstorming. You will use this graphic organizer to brainstorm your narrative poem. You will write down the setting of your poem, the problem and solution, the characters, the plot, which is what happens in the story, and any interesting words that you would like to utilize in your poetry. Remember, narrative poems are poems that tell a story. So this graphic organizer will help you plan out the story you want to tell through your poetry. Okay, boys and girls, let's summarize or recap what we did today. Today, we learned about narrative poetry. We also learned about the different elements of poetry that are utilized to make poetry more fun and interesting to read. This is Miss Noreen logging off. Thank you so much for watching, boys and girls, and happy learning.